hello. This is your favorite podcast, and we have an amazing guest today, Chase Friedman, founder of Vanquish Media Group. Chase has an amazing view and amazing approach to branding, and we will try to steal a couple of ideas from him today, right, guys? Hi, Chase. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much for being with us. Chase, I will start right away. I want you to introduce the company, what you do, your very unique approach to the topic. And I want to ask you about, can you share the inspiration behind founding the company, Vanquish Media Group, and its core mission? Because when I researched the company, I see that you have this motto, right? Profit with purpose. And why do you
Mhm.
believe it's essential for business today? And what's behind it? What's behind this motto? How it works?
Sure, happy to dive in. So, starting with that the mantra, this is my core belief that every person, every business has the inherent ability to do good and do well in the world, to profit with purpose. It used to be that we thought of these things as mutually exclusive, but they're not. And not only does modern business practice and stakeholder-driven economy suggest that, but imagine if you could grow your business, profit your business, and feel good about the work that you're doing and the impact you have and leaving a lasting legacy. So what a beautiful balance that is, right? That's my role, is helping kind of business owners and entrepreneurs and organizations achieve that balance. I serve as a fractional CMO and founder of Vanquish Media Group, my agency I've run for 7 years. And we're a brand strategy and marketing agency empowering purpose-driven leaders and businesses to achieve that balance, profit and purpose. As Napoleon Hill, if you're familiar with him, the 17 Principles of Success, as he states, a man without a definite major purpose is as helpless as a ship without a compass, right? So when I say purpose, I mean really a clear and concise identity of who you are and how you show up in the world for yourself and your business. And that's really what kind of I focused my work on, who I work with, how I operate. And in turn, it's fulfilling my own purpose. So win-win.
That's great. And that's actually leading me to my next question. We discussed this topic widely in our previous episode with Christina Inch, but I've seen that you worked with different companies in different industries, from startups to Fortune 500 companies and nonprofits as well. And that's what's interesting for us. How do you define your purposes in nonprofit companies with obviously social targets, and how do you work with
Mm-hmm.
those? Because every time I have a conversation with nonprofit company, I always ask them about what's your KPIs, guys, and they're like, we just want to make good. I was like, and that's a good point, but still, how do you motivate your team if you just want to do good? You probably have to have KPIs, right? So this is what my
Yeah.
question about. What's the difference with your approach to Fortune 500 companies, huge businesses, and nonprofits?
It's interesting. You'd be surprised. I think there's a lot of similarities. I think the difference between these organizations is how big, how scaled, how entrenched they are in their current ways, versus how nimble and agile they are to kind of pivot and adapt. Yes, I've worked with Fortune 500 companies, and that's a fantastic effort. But to be honest with you, kind of my sweet spot and what I really love leaning into is more of those SMBs, those small to medium-sized businesses, entrepreneur, founder driven, and nonprofits. They have the ability to be a bit more agile and nimble, to working directly kind of with that founder level role. But this is all about creating an identity, a clear and concise brand identity. And honestly, bigger companies have had invested more time and effort and resources into establishing what that might be. But is that really what's kind of motivating their employers and their employees and their stakeholders and their customers? I like to look at this paradigm where many people have passion for what they do, and some people have a greater purpose that drives them. But what many are lacking is that clarity. And and without that kind of constellation, you're kind of running in place. Right. So nonprofits, for example, really great at having that singular purpose, who they're trying to serve and impact, and usually some passion there too. Entrepreneurs, businesses, passion, right, through and through. They want to build a business, they want to grow a business, but not always kind of purpose. What's kind of the greater good beyond the bottom line? what both of them lack is kind of that clarity. And that's really what's kind of the connective tissue, is listening to your own team, listening to your stakeholders, understanding how you make their lives better, and making sure that's infused in part of your unique brand identity.
That's a very good point. But do you think that nonprofits actually need like, hard KPIs, or they're good to go with some, intention to the good?
No,
What's your
they're
opinion
still
on
a
that?
business. That's the thing. They're still a business. A
Yeah.
nonprofit is still a business. You can't help more people unless you are raising more funds and getting more donors and generating more revenue. The goal, their problem solution is helping resolve a pain or a problem, or providing relief to a certain group of people or causes, right? Not too dissimilar from a business, right? They're just doing it with products and services, which arguably nonprofits do as well. Still a business model. Still need to be held accountable to setting clear objectives, goals, KPIs, etc. Right? And that's kind of where they're really good at times at having that kind of core soul purpose, but sometimes struggling to figure out what are the next steps. How do we scale? How do we grow? How do we reach more people? And that's kind of really where kind of that marketing and development arm come in, to help amplify that message.
And this is the conversation we have through the whole series. Like, some people have the same approach. Well, me personally, I have the same approach that you do. Like, I think it's no matter if it's a nonprofit or business, like we still have to have hard KPIs. We still have to understand what kind of if we don't have a profit, we're still supposed to have some kind of a results, right? In the end of the day. And this is a transparency for our team too. Like, guys, we got to do that. But not all the people think that. And this is very interesting because a lot of people in the industry, a lot of marketers been working with nonprofits and businesses, and people have different approach. This is why this is so interesting. And that leads me to the next question. We had a lot of people with interesting backgrounds. Like, marketers usually have a very diverse backgrounds before they became marketers, or even at the same time they do different stuff. We had philosophers who became marketers, and people from different professions who got here. And you have a very unique background. And I'm just wondering, how does your experience in independent film and television influence your approach to branding and marketing? And with your background in film, television, and commercial, how do you think storytelling has evolved in this digital age? Because right now, it's all about storytelling. Like, we have to have a story about everything. And I think that you was way, ahead of us when you have this background. So what's your opinion on how it's changing? And do you actually have that advantage?
Well, I mean, one thing I could tell you is that, storytelling is kind of in my DNA. And like you said, that's kind of been the one constant throughout my career. I don't come from a marketing background or a branding background, but I saw the opportunity to elevate that industry and those practices by bringing just good, authentic storytelling to the table. So I grew up being fascinated by stories and storytellers, and I spent the first part of my career as an independent writer, director, producer, filmmaker, and started to kind of get sought out by businesses and brands to bring those skills to them, to their organizations, for their products and services. Because marketing and branding at its finest is just really good storytelling, right? How do you connect with and inspire and activate your audiences? And we're living in this era where people are no longer buying from just merely features and benefits and the fundamental kind of 4 Ps. They're looking for something more. They're looking to build relationships with businesses and brands that stand for something, that align with their values, that provide that aspirational identity if I use your service or buy your product, right? And so the best way to convey that is not just specs and tech and things that have been done in previous decades, but a compelling story. So yeah, to me, storytelling is kind of the one constant. You mentioned in the previous question how to measure KPIs and all that. The biggest gap that I see and trying to close for a lot of my clients and organizations is bridging promise with performance. It's one thing to tell a good story and promise that, hey, we want to do good in the world, and here's our mission and here's our vision. But how are you showing up? How are you actioning that? How are you performing that? What are the measurables? And we can measure many of those different things. So that to me is, yes, it's important to tell stories, but they have to be embedded in your strategy to grow, to make a profit, and do more good in the world.
Yeah, and this is a great point because we also break stereotypes with our podcast, and sometimes people just ask a question like, can't you just optimize the hell out of your campaign and that's it? Do you really need that storytelling? Do you really need it? Yeah, we need that. It's a really artistic profession. As you see, we have a Chase who has an incredible background, and it helps, I bet, because we had to learn that through the years when storytelling like trend was on, started like developing this with this amazing pace. And yeah, this is changing, and actually leads me to the next question. How do you ensure that the content produced by Vanquish Media Group resonates with the target audience and inspires action? Because with your background in storytelling, I see everything I checked about you guys is so great and it's really engaging. But how do you make it so good? How do you make sure it actually resonates with the audience?
I mean, this is certain part of it is coming from having produced thousands of content campaigns, but the main objective, we don't start with content. We don't start there. That comes a little bit later. Our methodology, my sequencing, it starts with brand discovery, getting clear, getting a deep understanding, auditing the brand. What are your core beliefs? What is your positioning in the marketplace that it creates your onlyness or your differentiation amongst your competitors? What is your brand personality and voice and tone, and how does that speak and connect with your core target audience, right? So understanding all of those things first, getting extreme clarity over your brand and your brand identity. That's discovery. Then moving into creating the storytelling, the assets, the website, the videos, the collateral that help amplify, to showcase that to the world, right? People want to dive right in and they think storytelling means having a great brand video. Well, okay, well, do you know the story that you're trying to tell? Do you know who you're trying to tell it to? So we have to figure that out first before we start creating content and all these beautiful assets and material. And then after we've got those two foundations in place, then it's growth. Then it's the marketing tactics to amplify that message and share it with the world. Just like a brand, a logo is not a brand, right? A mission statement is not a brand. A website is not a brand. It's an amalgam of all these different things. And so when you create content, it's one piece of everything that you do, whether it's through social media or a website or email or anything, that needs to be a consistent narrative. And so you got to look at the big picture and not just think you're going to, have a silver bullet. Well, this is our brand storytelling video. Here, go watch this. But how is it connecting in a through line and a consistent narrative that keeps your customer, your audience engaged wherever they go and whatever touch point they interact with?
Yeah, and a lot of people actually, a lot of people struggling with this. And this is why I wanted to ask you, like, what advice would you give to brands that are struggling to find their purpose, to find to find those dots they need to connect, align their business goals with societal impact? And how do you measure the success of branding campaign? This is what I'm personally very interested in, because I know how I do it. I'm not sure if I do it right, but what advice would you give to businesses who just trying to find their way to their brand purpose, and how do you measure that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it starts with asking yourself, why do you exist? What do you believe in the world beyond the bottom line, right? What is that kind of core motivating sort of value of why you've built your business and how you want to show up in the world? And I emphasize beyond the bottom line, not just to make money. Go a little deeper than that, right? So first, by asking yourself why, because that can be galvanizing, energizing, unifying, and it gives you a singular belief in what you do. Okay. Then understand how you are uniquely positioned as a business, as a brand, to deliver on that why. What makes us unique and different in our approach, our capabilities, our experiences, our methodology. And then you can kind of figure out all of the tactical stuff, the products, the services, the things that you do that offer that, again, still connect back to that why. It's a little bit of that golden circle, Simon Sinek sort of model. But what I think is kind of also missing from that is understanding who. And this gets into brand archetypes. This gets into psychology for people, the human race, around what makes us tick, right? There's kind of 12 main categories of personality archetypes. And we do a lot of that work with for the brand and the audience. so that we understand what are those kind of internal motivations, fears, aspirations, goals. And that really helps shape and give a personality to your voice. So it's not just coming off clinical, like our mission is X, right? We have to speak to someone like an individual, like a human being. So starting with why, getting deep and understanding really what inspires you and what you believe in is where I like to start.
And I feel like your approach, you probably feel like every time you unlock potential of some kind of a brand, it's probably feels like rewarding to you, right? Like you unlock brand's potential and you feel like you help those people to actually feel that, well, feel that feeling that they're supposed to feel, you know, feel that connection with the audience they're supposed to have. Do you feel like it's a rewarding feeling to you?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. That's why I do it. I think it fulfills me and my purpose in serving and helping others again align, see patterns and see constellations they can't see for themselves. That is truly rewarding. Like I said, I believe everyone innately has the ability and capacity to find that core purpose that energizes, that inspires, that motivates them, that gets them excited to wake up every day and do the work that they do. So yeah, it's a lot of this work is therapy. It's personal development. I think personal development precedes professional development. So yeah, in the process of this, it's getting real with who you are as an individual or individuals as a team. With what makes you tick, what makes you feel alive. And if you can infuse that into your business and your brand, what a magical combination. So I definitely get a proxy high from doing that.
Yeah, this is why we do it. And well, long story short, no, guys, we can't just optimize the hell of the campaign and make the brand work. We have a heart beside that. And lastly, I want to ask you about your company. I want to ask more about your plans, what you're going to do, what you plan to do. Where do you see Vanquish Media in the next 5 years? And do you plan to continue its mission of empowering purpose-driven organizations? Tell us more about your plans in the future and how can you actually help your partners, your potential clients, businesses, because we're all interested.
Yeah. I mean, look, the truth is I don't know what shape and form, any of this will take in the future. I do know that the one constant is my mission and my belief to help, business owners, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, organizations figure it out, right? Find that balance, help them kind of get rid of the old methodology of thinking of it's got to be all profit, all bottom line all the time, or on the nonprofit side, all purpose and all mission and kind of forgetting about the profit. It's finding that connection point. And that's why I've stepped into this role as a fractional CMO, which I've really loved. It's allowed me to be deeper in the trenches with these founders and these entrepreneurs, working with them strategically to identify that brand, create an actionable strategy, and then go oversee and manage deployment of it. That for me has been fulfilling because again, I like to roll up my sleeves, get my hands dirty, get a little messy at times. From an agency standpoint, you can't always do that. You're commissioned for a certain scope of work and this is what you do, but how are you kind of really connected to other aspects of the business? So, from my vantage point, it's just simply connecting with, value and mission aligned leaders and people that might feel stuck or stagnant or overwhelmed, and they believe that they can achieve something more and helping them get there.
That's amazing. Thank you, Chase. Thank you for being with us today. We had amazing tips on branding from Chase. And this was Chase Friedman, founder and CMO of Vanquish Media Group. Thank you so much for being with us today. We had great tips and I'm sure our audience will appreciate it. Thank you so much, Chase.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.